The Jurassic Park/Jurassic World franchise is of course one of the most well-known and highest grossing in film history, and with the latest entry Jurassic World Rebirth currently in theaters, I thought what better time than to go back and see how I personally would rank the franchise. Greetings all you movie junkies and entertainment lovers, and welcome to another ranked video. Today we're going to be talking about the Jurassic Park franchise. So starting at the bottom of the barrel, we have Jurassic World Dominion. Now I should point out that I enjoy pretty much all of these movies, and wouldn't really say that any of them are completely terrible, but this is definitely my least favorite of the series, which is a shame because I really wanted this one to be good considering the original cast was coming back and the great cliffhanger from the end of the last movie. And I think that's one of the main issues with this movie, as it doesn't do much with the concept of dinosaurs being loose around the world, and instead seems to focus more on giant locusts than it does dinosaurs. Although I do think we need more giant locust movies, but that's beside the point. The raptors chase sequence in Malta is fun, but that's pretty much the only standout sequence in the film. And the Giganotosaurus is cool, but they don't really do much with it until the very end. And it's the only main antagonist dinosaur in the franchise that doesn't eat a single person. And I think there was a big missed opportunity to reveal that the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park III was still alive and have it team up with the T-Rex to take down the Giga. It's not the worst movie ever made, but it is very disappointing and sadly, in my opinion, the weakest entry in the franchise. And then at number 6 we have Jurassic Park III. Now I will admit that I am quite fond of this one, as it was the first film in the series that I saw, but even after all these years I still really enjoy it. This did have probably the most production problems out of all the movies, and does feel very underdeveloped as a result, which also makes it appropriate that it's the only film in the franchise that doesn't have a proper subtitle. And originally it was apparently going to be set on a separate island from the first two films, but during production they decided to make it the same island from The Lost World, even though it looks nothing like it. But despite that, there's still a lot of really great standout moments and overall terrific effects that still make it worth watching today. And then at number 5 we have Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. A lot of people have been praising Jurassic World Rebirth recently for bringing back the horror element of the franchise, but honestly I would argue that Fallen Kingdom has just as much of that, if not more horror elements to it than Rebirth. I mean, the opening scene is practically a full-on horror movie and a great opening overall. My main issue with it being that it feels like it has a very overlong third act, because I don't think we spend enough time on the island. Especially when you consider that this is probably going to be the last movie that takes place there. And I think this movie would have worked a lot better had it spent more time there, with the ticking time bomb of the volcano erupting being more built up. But that's not to say I don't love the ending in the mansion with the Indoraptor, because I absolutely do. It's overall a pretty decent sequel to Jurassic World, but certainly not the best film of the franchise. And then at number 4, the most recent entry, Jurassic World Rebirth. For the most part, I thought this was a really solid and fun entry in the series with lots of great standout moments, like the boat chase sequence with the Mosasaurus, the raft sequence with the T-Rex, and the ending sequence with the D-Rex, or as I like to call it, the Rancor Rex, because that's basically what it is. Now, where this film I think struggles is very much in finding its own identity within the franchise, because although this movie is trying to bring things back to basics with going back to the classic franchise formula of our characters being trapped on an island with dinosaurs, it's also trying to follow the continuity of the previous movies. And I think that's where this film ultimately has some of its problems, because the choice that they made to have the dinosaurs dying off and that they can only thrive around the equator, I actually think was a really bad idea and has kind of crippled the franchise at this point. as it's no longer going to be living up to the title Jurassic World, and I think a much more interesting direction would have been to go in a more Planet of the Apes style direction, where the Earth is actually accommodating the reintroduction of dinosaurs, and the humans are the ones that are actually in trouble and suffering. But instead they went in completely the opposite direction. I think had they done this movie as a prequel to the first Jurassic World and called it Jurassic Park Rebirth instead, I think would have actually made a lot more sense. Even Gareth Edwards himself said that he wanted the movie to feel like an old unreleased film Universal found in the vault that they could have made in the late 90s. And part of me wishes that they would have actually committed to that idea more fully by actually setting it in that time period and have it be a proper prequel. I was also a little disappointed with how they decided to handle the D-Rex because it's not really in the movie until the very end. In fact, I don't think it should have been included in the trailers at all. The opening scene where they introduce and tease the D-Rex could have been executed way better, as it seems like they were trying to have it be somewhat ambiguous, similar to the way they teased the raptors in the opening of the original, but it just doesn't have the same effect. But overall, despite some of the issues that I have with the film, I still really enjoyed it. I just think certain elements could have been dealt with and executed a little better. And then at number 3, we have Jurassic World. It's crazy to think that it's already been 10 years on from the release of this movie, and honestly, I still think that it is a solid example of how to do a reboot right in general. I think it does a really great job at taking the franchise in a new direction, but also keeping a lot of the familiar elements of the franchise alive. And the concept of having John Hammond's vision being brought to life with the park now actually being open was just a really great concept to begin with. And this movie has one of my all-time favorite taglines, which is just, "The park is open." And as soon as everybody saw that, they just knew what that meant. So I thought that was an absolutely dynamite concept. And I think for the most part, how they handled that was actually done pretty well. And getting to see that aspect brought to life and then factor in the Indominus Rex breaking out, and you've got yourself a pretty entertaining, thrilling ride that overall does a great job following in the footsteps of the original film, whilst also being able to chart a new path for the franchise as well, even though subsequent entries perhaps didn't quite live up to it. But the whole ending sequence and honestly standout sequence of the movie is of course the ending fight with the T-Rex and Indominus Rex, which makes the whole movie worth watching all on its own. And then at number 2 we have The Lost World: Jurassic Park. I've always loved this movie and have honestly never really understood why it gets the hate it gets from some people. Perhaps part of it may have been because the original was so iconic and a pop culture defying film that any sequel just would never be able to fully live up to the hype. But I think over time this film has gained a lot more appreciation, and I think genuinely most people would agree that it's one of the better films in the franchise, even if you don't consider it to be close to the original. But what I really like about it is that it doesn't just take the typical sequel formula and just repeat most of what worked in the first film, but instead it very much stands on its own. And I would honestly say that just from a pure special effects standpoint, that this is just as good, if not better, than the original. But of course, the original was more groundbreaking for the time of its release and will always be more iconic for that aspect. But The Lost World, I would say, is an absolutely fantastic sequel overall, and the sequence of the trailer going off the cliff is probably not just one of my favorite sequences in the franchise, but one of my all-time favorite movie scenes ever. It's just executed incredibly well. And then at number 1, we of course have the original Jurassic Park. I think this is one of those cases where I think that this is pretty much going to be number 1 on everybody's list when it comes to this particular franchise. And I don't think I can really say anything about this movie that's not already been said a million times before. But what I will say is that this movie was absolutely a staple of repeated viewing during my childhood, as it was, I'm sure, for many people. Anybody who didn't or isn't growing up with this movie, I genuinely feel sorry for, because it really is just one of those magical, great classic films that really sticks with you when watching it at an impressionable age, despite how many times you've seen it. But it's also been great revisiting it as an adult and discovering just how well made of a movie it is all around, with one of my favourite scenes at this point being one that doesn't include any dinosaurs, which is the dinner scene, where they're talking about the ramifications of bringing back the dinosaurs. And the consequences of playing God, of course, is a theme that has continued to be brought up and explored in pretty much all the sequels, only making the original more relevant as time has gone on. So overall, the original Jurassic Park is, of course, without a doubt, still the best film of the franchise, as well as just being one of my all-time favorite movies. Alright guys, there you go. That is how I would rank the Jurassic Park / World franchise. Please feel free to jump in the comments down below and let me know how you would rank the franchise. So until next time, be sure to consume as much entertainment as humanly possible, and I'll see you in the next video.